one team that unfortunately isn't in contender for Blues fans is Carlton. Another howler on Thursday night, Geordie, and it leaves us lamenting another 50-point loss and asking questions about where the Carlton Football Club is at.
Well, it was a challenge, wasn't it? I think, you know, from being a player, the best position to be in is after you have a heavy defeat, to have a 5-day break so you don't overthink the coming game. And I think we were all watching in anticipation to see how, one, their effort was, I think, was the main thing that you look for off the back of a really disappointing loss. And they didn't perform. Let's be honest, it was a real letdown, and that just keeps the Wolves at the door. And you know, the noise around this football club at the moment will only get louder, I think.
Yeah, it was disappointing. The first quarter was just horrendous, wasn't it? So you would have expected a better response, especially the week they'd had going in. So I thought the senior players were disappointing. You know, just the lack of pride there, the lack of care, the lack of fight, and certainly doesn't. You can't relate that to Michael Voss, their coach, the way he used to fight and scrap out there as a competitor. So non-competitive performance. I would have been embarrassed if I was a Carlton supporter watching that.
Yeah, I think the real challenge is, you know, Voss is trying to sell this message, and then it's up to the leaders to then go out and perform, so then they can...
Do you see that?
No, I don't think we do. I think, you know, once again, you watch this game closely to see how the leaders perform under pressure with what has been a really difficult week, how they perform. And that is not with ball in hand. That is without the ball. And when you really get tested. So you just see here the easy nature in which Bergman and the other Port midfielders are able to spread from that stoppage, and we're highlighting Paddy Cripps at the bottom of the screen there. One, he doesn't have the capacity, but two, you've just got to give better effort. This is Motlop.
Yeah,
just stands there. There's no direction. There's no now he's too far. Now
the old handover is the best thing that happened to lazy forwards.
Yeah, so
no question.
Stole it from the cricketers, Brownie.
Yeah, that's right. Going in the third man.
So these were the types of behaviours that were their game was riddled with them. They were everywhere, and this is two that we decided to pick out, but we could have shown a tape of 11 minutes.
One player that it's been on the tip of everyone's tongue is Tom de Koning, arguably being offered at the moment, we think multiple years at $1.7 million, but he's just not. He's not playing anywhere near the standard of $1.7 million, and it's back to the effort as well. And I look at this and think this is an opportunity for a big man to have an impact, but just trundles through on defence. It comes down to what do you value when your side is under the pump. Now, if he leaves at the end of the year, then it is what it is. But like my plea to Tom de Koning would be go out fighting. If you want to choose, and no one would bemoan him if he chose $1.7 million. It's the biggest contract of all time in the AFL. But go out fighting. You're a big man. Throw your body around. Be there and commit to Carlton for the next 9 games. If he plays 200 games, that's 5% of his career that he's got to commit to. You just can't let that slide by and be a passenger in what could be a really important time for the Carlton Football Club.
He's had a fair drop-off too. You actually look at his numbers. You know, he's gone there. So he had a good start to the season. Around 5 to 10, he's ranked 28th player in the comp. Now he's down to 184. There's also TDK, Curnow, Chera, Weeder and Cripps, all ranked outside the top 180 players in the competition. Well, that's a big chunk of your salary cap sitting in their bucks, like close to, you're heading towards 50% of your salary cap, and you just no hope. You're no hope of competing against all the teams, let alone the very good teams, if your top players are not playing well.
Well, we're talking about a young fella who is yet, you know, to really show that he can handle the expectation, the pressure that is going to come with whatever decision he makes. If he chooses to move and he becomes one of the highest paid players in the competition, he's going to get that expectation sort of placed on him. But he's in a position that is least affected by any other position.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a ruckman, it stops and starts with you. So for him to have a drop-off there, he's being beaten by his direct opponent and hasn't been able to influence the game well enough through his own actions. You know, so he's out of form compared to what he was at the beginning of the year. I just think that much money.
Yeah, he's got
that much money for a ruckman is
Friday
is
night. You're still playing for Carlton at the moment. We don't know what's happening next year, but you're playing for Carlton. Whatever it is the last 8 weeks of the season, you need to crack in and show a lot of pride in your own performance.
Is it too big of a conversation to have right now? And one, I don't think you should be having, or you don't want to have in 3 years' time. When you look at the players on your list that have currency, entertain the idea to get them out the door and trade in some draft picks. And I'm talking...
Who?
And you've got to take the emotion out of it. I'm talking Cripps, Curnow, McKay.
Cripps, the first time I've been at Cripps. Like 40-odd votes in the Brownlow last year.
Like players, I sit here and look at the way the game is going, you've got to be able to transition the midfield. And I look at Melbourne.
Do you think Graham Rock could do that?
I think you've got to take the emotion out. I keep coming back to the best player in the league was traded out of Hawthorn. Lance Franklin left Hawthorn Football Club to go to Sydney and everything was OK. I just think you don't want to have these conversations in 3 years' time when the player that you could have traded out has lost their currency.
You say that in hindsight. Now. What were you feeling though when he left? Because that's what they.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Absolutely. I think if.
Well, you won a flag the next year.
Yeah, but I think if you want to be a mediocre side, you're not going to make tough decisions. And do you see Carlton winning a flag in the next 5 years?
Not on current form, no.
I honestly think that everyone should be up for discussion other than probably Jagga Smith, who we haven't seen, who's a highly prized draft pick.
Is it an overreaction, though, on
I don't
the season?
think so.
Because previous years, they made a prelim. Last year, they were banged up going into the finals. They played a final.
I don't think so. I think you're hearing stuff externally, which we've spoken about last week. Now you're looking at the list and the type of players they've got on that list. They were the oldest Carlton side that they fielded on the weekend since 1944. So it ain't a young list.
There is a difference between what you're discussing with Lance leaving Hawthorn and trading players from Carlton and that stability. I'm not sure the club knows that it's stable everywhere else to know that they need to throw their playing list around to get the results. They've got to work that out first.
Yeah.
You're coming off a flag, were you?
In 12, no. In 13 we were.
When you traded Buddy.
But I just
to Bucks's point, you're in a lot more stable position than Carlton are.
Yeah, but I liken it to Melbourne last year. Did they lose? Did they not bank the players like an Oliver trade or a Petrarca trade, and now their currency has lost and they haven't improved this year? Did they miss the trick on them?
Plenty of questions to be asked. We're going to head to John Ralph in the newsroom. Ralph, you've got some news around Michael Voss from inside Carlton.
Hello, Jack. Yeah, I think the issue is not whether Carlton decides to trade him, it's whether some players are quite grumpy and over the next 8 weeks decide whether they might decide to move on and find different pastures there. So Michael Voss has got 8 weeks to save his coaching career. The club's president, Rob Priestley, today emphatic. We're not making any decisions until the end of the season. He didn't guarantee him post-2025. Of course, he has a contract for 26. So now comes the decision of whether to spend $1 million or so to move on Michael Voss and his coaching team. My understanding is that Vossi has watertight contract with provisions in there in regards to mostly a full payout. You remember, of course, the 2023 season with those preliminary finals, and then, of course, the contract was signed an extension past that. And so we had real currency there when he signed a deal at an AFL power club that is not assisted, that is not on the AFL drip, which would explain some of those provisions. So if he can right the ship, there's still a prospect that he might remain, and then the football department would be tipped on its head around him. I don't think it's any surprise to think that Brad Lloyd, the club's football boss, is in some real peril. And then it's just a matter of how many of those assistant coaches move on as well, whether they're contracted or not. So Graham Wright takes over on August 15, a perfect time to have a couple of weeks as the new CEO and then make big, bold decisions for the Carlton Football Club.